Okay, so the next policy we'll cover in section 3 is expenditure switching policies. And what is the objective of the policy? It is still to improve your balance of trade by reducing your import expenditure. So that is the same as the previous objective, but the mechanism is a little bit different. Okay, so you can reduce the import expenditure by reducing the demand for imports, which for now is still the same, but here is where things get different. Why would the demand for imports fall? Well, it could be due to two reasons. And the first is it could be due to the relative quality of domestic goods and services being higher than the imported goods and services. Or it could be that the relative prices of imports are more expensive. Okay, so if there are imports that are going to be more expensive than the domestic alternatives, then this is where households may choose to switch to relatively either higher quality or cheaper domestic goods and services. And that is the point of expenditure switching. So you are not just reducing the spending, which is what the first policy was doing. Here you are saying instead of M, get C. Okay? Increase C instead of M. That's why it's switching. You're switching from what you could previously buy from imports, now you buy it domestically. So you are still spending, you're still getting the stuff, but just produced domestically. And then that is the intuition. But what are the types of policy? Or policies that can achieve this? And then what is the mechanism? Okay, how will the policies work in order to achieve the switching effect that we want to see? And now if you go to your notes, you can see that there are two types of policies suggested for you. The first is to depreciate your currency. The second is you could also employ protectionism. So example, you've already learned tariff, right? Your job, I will not cover this, is because I think Ms. Chen has already done quite a good job and went quite in detail, is to draw the link. What is the link between, these policies? How would depreciation lead to the relative prices of imports being more or less expensive, and how would protectionism do that as well? So go back and review the lecture that Ms. Chen has given in section 2, and if you need to for exchange rates, go back and review the lectures for exchange rates as well. Okay, in the notes they don't list supply side policy as expenditure switching, but it's actually also a possible type of policy that can lead to expenditure switching. Supply side policies. Why? Well, if you have increased R&D or you have innovation, then you may have a higher productivity. It may affect your cost of production, it may fall. It may also lead to you having higher quality or variety of goods and services. And again, draw the link between this to how would this lead to the switching effect. Okay, so your job really is to suggest the policy in your writing. The way you write it in the exams is when you have a type of policy, you can suggest that type of policy. Maybe you can define what it is, how it works, etc. But the mechanism really is to provide that link of this policy to the objective. Okay, so in this case, I'm not going to go through it in detail. You guys, please work on it on your own. I just want to highlight to you that actually it's also possible for these policies to have an effect on export revenue. Alright, that leads us very nicely into our last type of policy to improve balance of trade, which is supply type policy. And here, the objective is a bit different. Even though we know that supply side policy could still reduce import expenditure, we are trying to focus on how it may increase export revenue. Okay, so one way you can increase export revenue is by increasing the demand for your country's exports. Another way you can increase your export revenue is by increasing the price competitiveness of exports. Okay, price competitiveness is really just reducing the price of exports so that your quantity demanded of exports increase. Okay, and if you have a certain PED value, then it could be that your export revenue increases. What is the PED value that you will need? You can take some time to guess, but I'm just going to go through it for the interest of time. You need your PED to be more than 1. In other words, your demand is price elastic. The demand for your exports is price elastic, which really suggests that there are quite a few available substitutes. Okay, there are quite a few available substitutes. And if you reduce your price, improve your price competitiveness, people would switch from buying their local products to your exports because your exports are now relatively cheaper. Okay, so what are some ways, policies, supply side policies, that could get us there? Okay. Well, in the notes, they have suggested a few things, but the first is, in the notes, the first suggestion is, sorry, I'm struggling with my pen. Okay, to encourage exports. The second is to increase domestic productivity. Right? There are various ways you can encourage exports. For example, the government can provide subsidies to firms that are producing goods targeting the export market? And if that's the case, what will happen? Draw the link your own and link it to how that might possibly give that firm an advantage in terms of price competitiveness. Okay, it is also possible that the firm or the country could encourage productivity. And again, how would increased productivity lead to greater price competitiveness for your exports? That's not the only possible way. It's not just focusing on price competitiveness. If the productivity inherently increases the quality of your goods and services, especially if you're able to meet the changing tastes and preferences of the global consumption of this particular product and of this market, then actually the demand for your exports could also increase, even if the price of your exports may not necessarily be a lot cheaper. Okay, so please draw the links yourself. I'm not going so much into the detail. I believe that really at this juncture, you should be able to explain how productivity is linked to price competitiveness and how that may also help you produce better quality goods and services. And when that is achieved, then it is possible that your demand or your quantity demanded for exports may increase and your export revenue may also increase. Right? And that brings us to the end of our section 3, which is other trade policies.